Welcome to Red Friday, Chiefs Kingdom against the Seahawks. The Chiefs have to keep their eye on the prize, attack, get everything done that they can against a team that is maybe down but isn't out. They've shown some moxie. They have a lot of things going for them. How do these two teams match up? How do they get it done? And what do we think happens today on Locked On Chiefs?
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Happy holidays, everybody. It is Red Friday. We're getting ready for Seahawks week. This is, for somebody old school like me, the glory days of the division when this used to happen all the time. I have been and lived on both sides of that one in both cities. That's always fun for me. I enjoy this one. This is a team that I followed when I was in high school quite a bit. To see them both get back into the mix and be this like maybe the last hurdle that the Chiefs have to get over, although I think every game is a hurdle, this is going to be a fun one. We're going to get into all the details today. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for free on every platform, and that makes it easy to find and also easy to get a lot of different shows. We have a ton of them for every sport, and our show is 5 days a week, just like everybody else on this network. So check that out. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, RGR Football and NFL 33.
And I'm Chris Clark. Thank you for listening. So if you are watching on YouTube, please hit the like, subscribe, or the notification button, or all three of them. And please leave us an iTunes review or on Spotify. We really do appreciate those as well. There is a lot to talk about, and you could have just left it at I am old, but you had to say old school. So fair enough. Let's go ahead and just jump into this game. There is a lot to talk about. This is and I told Corbin this on the crossover, which if you haven't listened to, go check that out. A lot of good information there. I told Corbin that this is the game that I circled after the Bengals game that was the last big hurdle for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not so sure I feel that way anymore, mainly because of the way that they played down to opponents the past couple of weeks.
Meaning the Chiefs or meaning the Seahawks? Because I think the Seahawks have done a little bit of both.
No, the Chiefs. Specifically the Chiefs.
Agreed. It becomes troublesome when you can't get out of your own way and you continue to play down to different teams. Now, that said, we are at this point pretty spoiled in Chiefs Kingdom, I have to admit. Yep. When we're throwing some of the defenders under the bus when they, allowed, 129 yards passing? This is a team that can probably produce more than that, although they're missing at least one major component of their pass game. There's one that Steve Spagnuolo has already specifically identified that they have to get ready for, and we'll get to the matchups here in the next segment. But it is about taking what's happened the last couple of weeks and righting the ship. I still think that the Seahawks are kind of a corner team that can do some damage, especially if they get part of their offensive firepower back. But it's all about the Chiefs and how they go about to set not playing down to them. Make sure that if they have a weakness, that they exploit it. If they have an advantage, they take it to its full context and they don't let up. And that's what we need to see right now just to prove it. So you can see the high end for the playoff run that we all know is there, but we just haven't seen it in a while.
Yep. No, I agree. And I think that that's something that you have to watch. And I think that is something that we're going to have to watch going into this game is can Kansas City actually take a step forward and get back to the team that they should be? The problem is the weather is going to be horrible for this game, and they're going to have to deal with it, and they're going to have to figure out a way to move the ball. And quite honestly, I do not think passing is going to be something that they're going to want to do a lot of in this game. I know Reed loves to pass, but with temperatures probably being in the negatives, at least with wind chill, that's going to make them more reliant on the run more than likely. And we'll talk about the matchups in this next segment. But before we get there, I want to say really quick, Chiefs did have 7 Pro Bowl players. This is the first show we're doing since that was announced. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, obviously there, Chris Jones there as well. And then you also have Tommy Townsend made it as the starting punter. Creed Humphrey is a starter. And then you have Joe Thuney and Orlando Brown as well. So just want to throw that out there. Those two guys, Thuney and Brown, are not the starters, but they are in the Pro Bowl.
Yeah. Hey, and we all know that there's elevations constantly. It depends on who makes the actual playoff seeds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That there are going to be some movement there. So I think we're safe in expecting that a lot of them are going to get some exposure. Question is, do they play? Is it worth it? It's the same weekend as the Senior Bowl, so I'm not going to be watching it. I'll tell you that right now. There's a lot going on to see where that comes. But recognition is good. It comes with the expectation, and that brings us back to like, how do they play up to their expectations? I hope that whatever is going on, and hopefully inside Arrowhead, it's been a little bit of a mash ward this week. Obviously on the defensive line, spread a little bit to the safeties. Hopefully it stops there. And so as long as that offensive line unit doesn't get the bug inside the room, I feel like this is going to be an opportunity for them to raise their game and actually outperform what they've done recently.
Yeah, and they should. And this is a game that they need to get right. Like you and I have talked about, that they need to get right before the playoffs. This is the game they need to start, because this is the last team that is really almost playoff caliber. And I will put the Seahawks there because I think they were playing good enough football early in the season to prove that they should be at least a playoff team or really close to a playoff team. So, the only two games you got left after this are the Raiders and the Broncos. Neither of those teams are going to make the playoffs, and neither of them are good enough to make the playoffs. They're still going to be tough, though, because they're divisional games, so that's going to be something to watch.
True.
But you go into this game and you go up against a guy in Geno Smith who has reinvented himself in Seattle, and this is going to be something that's going to be fascinating for me to watch this week.
I am fascinated as well, because I have a take on this at the national level. I think people are a little frustrated with. I have not been impressed to the point where I think they're out of the quarterback market in this coming draft, that they're going to have
I don't disagree. I
a lot
don't
of people do. In fact, when my first mock comes out on NFL 33, you guys are going to see some of that. And we are going to resume the NFL draft show coming here soon, just as we take a little time off for the holidays. That's going to be part of it, because this is a factor for this team. The quarterback is a question. The quarterback delivers today or this week. I mean, it could change some of that fortune for what happens in the offseason. I personally am not terribly concerned about it. We're going to talk about why, who's with them, and who isn't this particular week on the backside of this. But first, our friends at Turo want to help you out. It's the world's largest car sharing marketplace. And with them, you can book any car you want, wherever you want, from a community of local hosts. It's easy to browse for a huge selection of vehicles for any occasion and any use, really. You can get a minivan to go run soccer mom kids around, or soccer dad, as in my case, run kids around. You can grab a pickup truck, get some kind of chore done. And then you can even try some things out, whether it's a sports car or an EV maybe. Although with the cold going on right now, I would stay away from the EVs. They're going to have some trouble. But every trip is backed by liability insurance. That makes it easy for you, and terms, conditions, and exclusions do apply. But forget about those boring rental cars and find your next drive over at Turo.com. That's Turo.com. And while you're in that Turo, make sure that you stay safe, because if you didn't know, driving high is just as bad as considered under the influence as driving drunk. That has an outcome that is going to hurt somebody, whether it's just you or somebody else. That means driving high could get you a DUI. Your friends will know, your family will know, even your coworkers are going to find out. So everybody is involved in when you do something that is outside of what law enforcement officers don't want you doing, and that is driving high either. So under the influence of marijuana or alcohol, it can slow your response time and change things that you perceive, time and speed. So be very careful. So even if you think you're fine to drive when you're not, make sure that the bottom line is that if you feel different, you drive different. So don't take the chance. So remember, drive high, get a DUI, be safe, paid for by the NHTSA. This is that time of year where people kind of push a couple of things, and I do think that that's challenging. So let's be safe. Everybody enjoy your holidays, and let's make sure that we're taking care of business there in getting another ride or an Uber or whatever else you need to do to not be on the roads impaired.
And don't visit a bank.
Yeah, I mean, see, what's funny is we don't address things like this on this show because we actually talk about football. So for those of you that are looking for an update on who's in the stands, this ain't it. But what will be there, what will be on game day, is going to be an offense on the Seahawks side that we started talking about in the last segment. But there's two key updates in my mind as we stand to record here on Thursday for you. One is that looks like Kenneth Walker will be available. Looks like Lockett will not be available. What's the bigger thing to you, the plus of Walker or the minus of Lockett?
Well, based on the way that this game is playing out, and I guess I'll say it this way, Kenneth Walker is not practiced on Tuesday and Wednesday. We are assuming, based on a little bit of inside information, that he should be available on Saturday. It's possible he won't be, but to me, Kenneth Walker is probably the bigger the bigger issue for them. I realize what Tyler Lockett brings to this offense, but with the weather that you're going to be dealing with in Kansas City, having the opportunity to run the ball and being able to run the ball well would get you in a scenario where you would have a chance to win this game, because the elements are going to be something that you're going to have to fight against.
Yeah, agreed. I think he's a huge boon to them, being able to hold the ball a little bit, being able to help Gino out. We'll talk about him in a minute. But being able to run the ball requires some offensive output and effort that the offensive line has to do. And when you take a look at what they did last week, I just pulled up because I wanted to know their actual blocking grades. And for PFF, we all know the grades are not exactly the end-all, be-all. But when you pick that up, Walker's one of the better blockers assigned to their team. It is not their offensive linemen that stand out there, although kudos to Damian Lewis for being a serviceable player. I think what has happened of late, and I was very high on both of the rookie tackles that they took, and they are starting them both, in Charles Cross on the left-hand side and Abraham Lucas on the right-hand side. They've kind of hit the rookie wall. They struggled a little bit last week, gave up some pressures. I think it was 4 apiece last week. That is the kind of thing that this Chiefs front has to take advantage of. We've seen it be the last few weeks. The front be on and the secondary be a little bit loose, and then secondary be on and the front not really put out. So they got to put it all together against this one. I think this is a chance for George Karlaftis, but Dunlap as well, to make some impacts. I think Mike Dana hopefully will be recovered because they want to see him back. If they are healthy, how do you see this? Well, of course. That was my next question. If they are all healthy, including Chris Jones, how do you see this defensive front performing against the Seahawks offensive line?
I think you made a great point. I think they have hit the rookie wall in Lucas and Cross. I think both of them are going to be good players. Obviously, Cross was a highly drafted player, and they have a lot more built up in him and whatnot. And we'll see how he ends up playing out in his career. But from what you saw the first part of the season, he was playing very well. And you're going to, as a rookie, generally hit a rookie wall at this point in the season, especially offensive linemen, because you're playing all the snaps. You're not getting time off like some of the skill position players are. So that's going to be something to watch. How's that going to affect, a guy like George Karlaftis, who's playing a lot as a defensive end as well for Kansas City? Not playing as much as the offensive lineman, but still playing a ton. Chris Jones finally being 100%, or as close to 100% as he's going to be during this time of year. Because he definitely wasn't against the Texans, and I want to point that out. He was still sick during practice on Tuesday and Wednesday. Mm-hmm. Or I guess he was back to practice on full on Wednesday, but he did not practice on Tuesday. He was still out with the illness. He played through it. He tried to give his team what he could, and he actually was the reason that Davis Mills broke the pocket on that fumble. So he did have a little bit of an effect, even if it wasn't what he normally would. I think it's huge if they have their entire defensive line. If you have Dana and Karlaftis and Jones and Frank Clark, and then you have other guys to rotate in Saunders and Brandon Williams and Dunlap, I think you're in a great spot. You have Frank Clark and Dunlap, who are going to be looking forward to this game because they're playing against their old team, so that's going to play into it as well. If you can stop the run in this game and double DK Metcalf, I think you're going to be feeling pretty good as a Chiefs defense.
Yeah, I have to think so too. And I think that is going to be a focus. But before we get there, I want to flip to the other side, because I think we need to spend a minute on DK in general. On the other side, in defending the pass rush, there really is 2 elements that I think Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offensive line need to be prepared for. Their best pass rusher this season is Uchenna Wilson, who I think some people discounted in recent years. He's consistent, he's steady, and he is getting things done. Is it all out? I think his win percentage in the league this season is like 13%. He actually spiked at 17% this last week. So he got fewer opportunities against the Niners that they played last week. Obviously, with Purdy in their quarterback situation, they didn't have that many pass rush snaps. But he's still making the best of it. Him and Quentin Jefferson are the 2 guys on this defensive front that are going to be coming after him that I think the Chiefs' offensive line has to really pay attention to. Beyond that, I think there's opportunity there to kind of get varied. I don't think they're going to have to use a lot of trick plays or anything like that. I do think running the ball, because of the weather, is probably going to be a Chiefs' advantage as well. Although, if anybody can throw it in sub-zero conditions, it's going to be Patrick.
Yeah. No, and I agree with you. Mahomes is able to throw it. It's the question of, are the receivers going to be able to catch the ball? That's my main concern when you start talking about throwing the ball around very much. And quite honestly, I'm just going to tell you, I would probably take under 300 this week if I were looking at this game, because I just don't think Mahomes is going to get that in this weather. But that's going to be something that we're going to have to, see how that plays out on Saturday, especially with McCole Hardman not coming back. I thought that with Hardman coming back and Tony being available, that was going to open different things up in the Chiefs offense. Now it's sounding like they don't think that Hardman's going to be back. And quite honestly, I would rather have Blake Bell back this week than Hardman, just for the simple fact of, look at the weather, look at what you're going to have to do in this game. Hardman is not going to be as much of a factor because of what he does in the offense, in my mind, because unless he's going to be running side to side and doing, jet sweeps and all that, having an extra tight end in there that can block could really help.
Yeah, I agree. I hope that this is not a continued thing with Jody Fortson. We'll get to that here in a little bit, but I think matchup-wise, it looks like an opportunity for the Kansas City Chiefs to not only play well and get a W, but kind of resurrect their focus and their fire. Springboard.
Well, and it's going to be interesting to me if they can get Lucas Niang involved and go 6 offensive linemen and actually run the ball a lot more this week. And I know we've talked about them running more and more as the weeks have gone on, but I really do think that in this game, that's going to be a key. And we'll see. We'll see what conditions are like. The question, we know it's going to be cold. The question isn't necessarily it's going to be cold or not. The question is it going to be snowing as well? That's still a little bit up in the air. Obviously, a couple of days away, things can change. So not going to try to pin that down, but it is going to be very cold going into this week. But before we get into our predictions for this game, I want to tell you about our friends over at BetOnline, where the game does start. And there is going to be a lot of things that you can go bet on this weekend for this game. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball. And they did cover the World Cup, and there's obviously other sports out there as well that you can go check out. They've got it all covered at BetOnline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right. After the game,
you said you want to talk about DK Metcalf for a second. Let's hop there real quick before we get into our prediction.
I think the offense, in terms of being able to keep up with the Kansas City Chiefs, it is about that pairing of Geno Smith and DK Metcalf. Now, DK has the straight line speed to run past all the Chiefs corners, save L'Jarius Sneed. And L'Jarius may end up giving up a step to him in the first place. But he hasn't been productive recently. It's been troublesome. It's been a physicality issue. It's been the way that their offense has been running in full. And I think that the Chiefs' young secondary, this is an opportunity to take maybe one of the premier athletes at the position in the NFL and put themselves up against him in a way that allows them to gain some confidence. It's about dissuading completions. It's not about being able to turn and run with him or stop him from being able to turn and run. It's just about making PBUs and incompletions. And I think this is an opportunity for them. I think this could bolster the rookie corners in particular going into the postseason.
Well, and I will say this, the other thing that he has going away from him this week is the fact that he's not going to have Tyler Lockett on the other side. That is going to allow Kansas City to attack DK with double coverage. And quite honestly, I'm not saying that their other wide receivers and their tight ends can't do anything, but DK Metcalf is going to be the guy that's going to have to get going for them and be a force on offense, especially if Walker doesn't play, which again, we think he's probably going to. But if he doesn't play, that this offense gets a lot more one-dimensional, and then you're really going to have to rely on Metcalf, and he's going to have a huge game for you to stay in it, unless Kansas City does what they've done in the past couple of weeks and almost beat themselves.
Yeah.
So the one thing I talked about in our keys was they cannot continue to beat themselves. They need to have a clean game. You need to get out of this game without turning the ball over. If you do that, winning should be easy.
Knock on wood. I will say this, though. When you look at what their offense was last week, and obviously it changes week to week, but between Lockett and Metcalf, it was 50% of their targets in their offense. Now, without Lockett, I think that obviously you want to swing some of that to DK, but I think Fant's going to have to take some of it up. I think it's more likely that Fant has a better matchup against the Chiefs defense than DK
Absolutely.
does. Metcalf put up 55 yards last week, 71 yards the week before. He did get a score there, but he's averaging in the last month right at 11 targets per game. So that was with Lockett. I think it's going to go up. So again, if you're able to just force incompletions, doesn't have to be takeaways, it doesn't have to be anything major, just force incompletions, whether that's a double team, which I do expect the Chiefs to have to do. They're going to have safety help over the top so that those young corners can be aggressive physically. And if they do get beat, they can be in trail and have a safety coverage coming down as well. That's going to be key to me. But if they can do that, then I think they can control this Seahawks offense.
Well, and I will say this as well. I think that you're looking at a game where, with the elements the way that they're going to be, throwing the ball to a guy like DK Metcalf on the routes that he is so good at running is going to be even more problematic than it normally is. So having the opportunity to cause incompletions, not necessarily with PBUs, just tight coverage and having to make Geno Smith actually really try to win with throwing perfect passes. If they do that and they get beat, they get beat. But more than likely, in this type of inclement weather, it's going to cause issues for the Seahawks. And if it's not an incompletion, maybe it's an interception going the other way.
We can always hope, but we'd love to see that, right? That's one of the things that I think they need to get some fire underneath them to not only cause the PBUs, but take the ball away.
They're just not getting enough takeaways. And that's a problem as well. I mean, you turn the ball over 9 straight weeks like they have and not getting takeaways, you're lucky to win it. You're lucky to have won as many games as you have.
That's fair. So long story short, I think I went first last week. What do you see happening in this ballgame?
You know, it's really going to come down to the weather for me. And what I think Kansas City wins regardless of the weather. I think that they have the ability to win. I think they're the better team. I think they have the better roster. Again, it goes back to what I said is if they don't turn the ball over, I think they're going to be in really good shape. The question I really have this week, though, is are they really going to put up points? Is this going to be a game where they get to 30 points? Because to me, it could be a game where maybe they're struggling to get to 24. And I don't know that it's really going to be on the defense of Seattle. It's more of the inclement weather and running the ball as much as they are. I don't think they're going to get the possessions they normally do. And what we've seen from the Chiefs offense in the past couple of weeks is they have struggled when they get in the red zone early in the game. Well, if they do that this game, they may not score 24 points. Mm-hmm. It may be an issue of, and that, there's the other question. How are you going to kick in this weather? How's that going to go?
What's that?
Yeah.
Oh, there's kicking. I forgot.
I still think Kansas City wins. I'm going to go 24-17 Kansas City.
Okay. I am double checking the weather right now just to know what that number is, because that's where my thought went to as well. How can you play it? How can you run the kicking game? They could score 27 points and have it not be 2 field goals and just be a missed PAT, to tell you the truth. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Let's see. It looks like at kickoff, we are considering it, if this will come up, 24 degrees. That's tough. I don't think that's
24 degrees.
That's what I was seeing here.
Wow. That's a lot warmer than it was last night.
Right? Now that is a forecast, folks. That never comes actually true, so we'll see. But say that it's grossly above zero. Say it's 12. I think that starts to feed into how well you can kick, because the ground just isn't quite as hard. But I am going to defer towards the offense putting up points rather than the kicking game. I do think you're close. In the end, I go back to the first ball game that Patrick Mahomes started. I was in the stadium that day here in Denver, and it was -7, and it didn't deter him at all. And I think he's only gotten better since then. So it will be on the pass catchers, not the passer, I think, to establish the passing game. I think in the end, they do score 28 points the old-fashioned way. I don't think that they allow more than 17 to the Seahawks. I do think it ends 28-17 Chiefs. We want to know what you think. Yep.
Really quick, I just want to throw out, I'm looking at AccuWeather right now at kickoff. It says it's 12 degrees with a real feel of -2. But the thing that sticks out to me, and this is why I went and looked. Wind of 13 miles an hour with gusts up to 23. That is the bigger key when you start talking about passing and kicking, is how the gusts are going to play out in this game, and how much is that going to make that cold air feel even worse for the
Run the
players
ball,
on
Andy.
field.
Run the ball.
Exactly. Pacheco, please get over 100 yards. And honestly, in this game, I would not mind seeing Ronald Jones get 10 carries.
Cool. Mike Burton too. Hey, let's make it
I'm not going to go that far.
Folks, we'd like to know what you think. If you'd leave your predictions on the comments here on YouTube or in the reviews on Apple or on Spotify, whichever you prefer, we would appreciate it. We'd like to see if you guys are a lot closer than we are. Always a fun thing to do when the Chiefs are getting ready to play a ball game. Thanks for spending your time. Hope you have a wonderful holiday. We'll see you post-game live with Matt Derrick, so don't miss that. Thanks for being with us today, and we'll talk to you then.